Hello and welcome to Tralee Bay and Fenit, County Kerry, home to Little Samphire Lighthouse. To all who live along the Dingle Peninsula and North Kerry coast, Little Samphire Lighthouse is a beloved part of the coastline. Indeed, even visitors develop a quick fondness for this compact, idyllic lighthouse. Join me on a tour of Little Samphire Island as we talk about the history, heritage and folklore surrounding this iconic lighthouse in Tralee Bay. Little Samphire Island Lighthouse, or Fenit Lighthouse as it is known, stands about a half-mile off the coast of Fenit village in County Kerry. The coastal waters from Brandon Point to Ballyhaig, around the Maharees and into Tralee Bay are known for their dangers. Close to 200 shipwrecks are attributed to the area. Rocks, reefs, shallows are among the perils. These waters were navigated by vessels entering Tralee Bay to the historic shipping harbours of Blennerville, Tralee Ship Canal and Fenit Port. Tralee shipping and merchant interests requested the lighthouse be built. The Jenny Johnson, a famine-time emigrant ship, sailed from Tralee to North America. The Jenny Johnson made its voyages in the early construction days of Little Samphire Lighthouse. Construction began in famine times in late 1840s. The lighthouse was designed by George Halpin, Inspector of Lighthouses and Inspector of Works for the Commission of Irish Lights. Fenit Lighthouse is built on Little Samphire Rock, the flatter of two twin islands. Fenit Port and Harbour are located on Great Samphire Rock, the higher island. The twin islands are approximately 3/4 of a mile apart. The island was purchased for the purpose of housing the lighthouse in 1848. Both islands, Great and Little Samphire Islands, owe their name to the small coastal plant rock samphire. The common English name, samphire, is thought to be derived from the French wording herbe de Saint-Pierre.
The traditional way to get out to the lighthouse would be by boat. This boat here, the Kerry Colleen, has been serving the lighthouse for the last 30 years or so. It has carried the lighthouse attendants, maintenance men, diesel for the engines, and now tourism in the last 10 years. It's been carrying passengers out to the lighthouse and back.
I skippered the Kerry Colleen to take people out to the lighthouse about 15 years ago, and I would take out Tommy then when he needed to go to check the engines and pump up the diesel. We'd have to pump the diesel into the tank for the engines. It was a service one, and if the engine was down, then the engineers would have to come down to check the engines and start them and see if there's something wrong with them. Like, yeah, the Grand Whale anchored south of Little Samphire Lighthouse, and they refueled the tanks for the two engines, and any time that they needed, they done it. When Irish Lights decided to go solar, they brought stuff out by the helicopter, and they had to get stuff for the roofs. All that had to go out by the helicopter because it was too much for the boat, or for the boat to bring it out, too heavy. And we take it out from the lighthouse, out to the lighthouse from the sailing club in Fenit. And I have to hook on the thing, and whoever's outside then unhook it. And I'd go and collect them in the evening.
It is a lovely morning this morning, so it is then.
It is lovely in Cam.
It is lovely in Cam. Some days it can be quite tricky coming alongside the lighthouse.
The Kerry Colleen boat is sailing in Fenit with over 28 years. It's coming to the lighthouse with at least 26 years. In COVID, my husband Alan and I were offered to buy the boat, and we did. And to our delight, it has worked out quite well. It's restored our natural interest in retaining Fenit's maritime history. We called it the Tralee Bay experience, as it is that when you come out on board the boat and when we talk you through the harbour and the history. We were very lucky with the Kerry Colleen, as she came with the skipper, Eddie Joe O'Mahony. He's great when Alan isn't around, and he loves doing angling tours as well. Today we have a trip going to the Lighthouse, and we're here now with John McGibney, and we're just about to go aboard. And we'll have about 2 trips today to the Lighthouse, weather permitting, and we also then have eco tours. When we drive up to the Lighthouse, the excitement in all ages, young and old alike. Some people are looking at the Lighthouse all their lives, and we come up to it and they cannot believe they're actually going to go aboard. Fenit Lighthouse, our little Samphire Lighthouse as it's known, means an awful lot to me. The lighthouse is the guardian of the bay. Every ship that comes in, every boat that comes into Tralee Bay, she guides them.
I've been on the sea all my life, I suppose since I'm very young. And I've been on boats and fished with my family for probably, I suppose, 20 years, or even younger, I suppose, even when I was going to school. We're very lucky from a young age. My dad would take us out in the boat and bring us out around the lighthouse, and I suppose that's where we learned some of our skills. We'd be steering the boat and doing a bit of navigation and stuff like that, and be going around the lighthouse, and we learn where to go and not to go. And I suppose from a very young age, it was a great way to learn. We'd have great fun as kids going up and tying up against the lighthouse and going around a walk. And I suppose from a young age, we've just been mesmerised by the landmark, and it's even to this day, it still mesmerises us, and it's lovely now that we can bring out our kids, you know, our nieces and nephews out there and do the same thing and teach them. And you know, it all kind of revolves around the lighthouse, where we park up and go swimming off it, and even to this day we still love being around it. And I suppose all that kind of stuff from a young age has helped me to where I am now. I'm the first female coxswain in Fenit Lifeboat Station, and you know, I've been that for about 3 years, so that's helped bring me on, I suppose, to where I am now. 22 years on the lifeboat itself, being a navigator, and I suppose I've really picked up and gone from strength to strength with the navigation through that. So I'm really looking forward now to this Oyster season. It'll be my first season fishing my own permit and skippering my own boat. We have one of the most beautiful and natural oyster beds in Europe. So I'm really looking forward to this year now. It's quite unusual, I suppose, to see a lady skipper up the oyster bed. There probably has been maybe 1 or 2 before me, but it is quite unusual. But I love to set myself a challenge and just go for it. So before every oyster season, every boat does their checks, where you might go out and throw out your dredge, let it out, bring it back in, make sure the hauler is working, and make sure everything is all good to go for the season, because you don't want things going wrong, because it's a short season and you've a quarter to get. So once the dredge is out there now, we always have to keep an eye on where we're going, because there'll be a lot of boats around us, and a lot of the wire goes out with the dredge, so you don't want to snag anyone else, run across anyone else's line. So you have to be constantly keeping an eye on everybody else. So the lighthouse is a fantastic landmark for navigation. When I was younger, my father would always tell me, you know, when you're up the oyster bed and when you want to come down in a spring low tide, that you keep the lighthouse open, and it just means you're in the channel. So I'm looking out at the lighthouse now behind us, and it's such a beautiful landmark. And sometimes when you're maybe on a trip and you're coming in, you're maybe 10 miles off at the dusk, and you can see the lights flashing. It just gives you that homely feeling that, you know, you're nearly home and you're safe after your trip.
So I'm just walking in this narrow path with high walls, and this will take us up to the living quarters and the lighthouse tower. The Keepers Lodge had a ground and dormer floor. There were small windows, front, rear and sides, with the front door in a small porch facing Tralee Bay. Besides the lighthouse and Keepers Lodge, there were outhouses that housed mechanical equipment and homestead functions such as a toilet. The grounds were subdivided by walls, serving as buffers from wind and sea surge. There was space for a vegetable garden, limited grazing for a goat for milk, outdoor areas used as play areas for lighthouse children, and other amenities supporting the keeper and his family. It is still amazing to think that such structures were built by bringing all construction materials to the island by boat. The 1901 census tells us the lighthouse was home to a lightkeeper, his wife and 7 children. The lodge and island must have been bustling with family life. In contrast, in 1911, the lighthouse was home to a family of 3, a lightkeeper, his wife and their only child. Lighthouse keepers' children went ashore for schooling when the weather permitted. Going to school involved a short boat journey and then an approximate 2-mile walk to the Chapeltown schoolhouse.
Lightkeepers' logbooks like this one are particularly special. They contain hundreds of documents, original telegraphs, supplier documents, circulars, memoranda, handwritten letters. They're like a portal to the past. There's actually a story with every page that you turn. Now the Fenit logbook, with its aging paper and fraying binding, also provides insight into the challenges of living at a light station. There's extensive documentation on the roof slates being lost in storms, damage to the station's lightning conductor, considerable dampness in the living quarters, rat infestations, and injuries sustained while working at the light station. Several of the documents in this logbook are circulars from the Commissioners of Irish Lights. One dates back to May 9, 1910. It reads that on the death of King Edward VII, lighthouse flags were to be flown at half-mast for the duration of the royal funeral. Now another similar correspondence from 1911 instructs that the flagmast was to be dressed rainbow fashion for the coronation and the birthday of King George V. Another such correspondence from 1917 inquired whether the lightkeeper could prepare and fire distress rockets. The lightkeeper responded that he had 11 Red Star rockets on hand, that he was familiar with the procedure and could prepare and send up the rockets within 5 minutes if needed. From a pivotal day in history, there's a telegram from November 12, 1918, one day after the end of the First World War. The telegram instructs the lightkeeper to exhibit full power of the light again until further notice. It's hard to imagine the significance of that telegram, but navigation lights had been dimmed and even extinguished for the duration of the war. Many records in this logbook note the boat contractor and others who supported the lighthouse, including generations of the Crowley family from Tallaght to Fenit. For example, there is a letter to Irish Lights from May 1912. It states, I beg to report that Mrs. Crowley, boat contractor, died May 9th. Her son, Tom Crowley, has managed all contracts for some time and is willing to carry out the contract as before, giving the same securities. He is a very reliable man and a first-class boatman. The letter is signed, "I am, sir, your obedient servant, Orr Lyons, Lightkeeper."
When the lighthouse went automatic in 1956, there was no further need for lighthouse keepers. So the last one left that particular year. I never remember meeting any of the lighthouse keepers because at that time there was very little opportunity for them to mingle with the local people. After that, the maintenance of the light was the responsibility of the lighthouse attendant, and also the maintenance of the buildings. And from 1956, for many years, my father, Dan Crowley, was involved in the conveying of the gas cylinders to the lighthouse that were required to power the light. Now, the attendant at the time would have been Michael Joe Crowley, whose father and his mother before him were lighthouse attendants, and he was followed by his son, Tommy Crowley, who of course is still with us. But my dad was involved in the conveying of the cylinders from the mainland to the lighthouse, and also helped to maintain the building. The tower and that area had to be painted, whitewashed every year and kept in pristine condition, and it was.
The logbook covers the years the Moore family were stationed at Fenit Lighthouse. There are heart-wrenching records, such as correspondence about the doctor being called to the light station in several instances for young Elizabeth Moore, daughter of lightkeeper Michael Moore. These records are a sad harbinger of Elizabeth's death at Christmas 1918, only a few short months shy of her 8th birthday. Elizabeth was home for Christmas from boarding school in Mallow. From the age of 5, boarding school was paid for by an education allowance from Irish Lights.
Little Samphire Island is no stranger to love stories and tragedies through the ages. One family, that of lightkeeper Michael Moore and Caroline Moore, his wife and assistant keeper, reminds us of that. Michael Moore was from a light-keeping family. Michael's wife Caroline was also from a light-keeping family. One of her grandfathers was the subject of a story, Love at the Lighthouses, as told by author Peter Goulding. When Michael was stationed at the Maidens in County Antrim, he met Caroline, and there their lighthouse story began. They were lighthouse keepers through and through, Michael serving as lightkeeper and Caroline as his assistant. So it was that Michael and Caroline maintained the lighthouse. Supplies were delivered twice a week, and delivery on Christmas Eve in 1918 was met with great excitement, bringing extra provisions, treats for the children, and Christmas letters from home. The Christmas cheer was short-lived. The provisions boat returned to the mainland, and the little girl Elizabeth fell ill. Michael put up the distress flag, but with angry seas and mountainous waves, the lighthouse couldn't be reached. It took 3 days and nights for the sea to calm. When the local doctor could finally reach the rock, it was too late. Little Elizabeth had passed away with her parents at her bedside. She died of a combination of meningitis and influenza.
Just 4 short months after Elizabeth's death, Michael Moore received transfer papers to Carlingford Lighthouse. That was probably the saddest family transfer from Little Samphire Island Lighthouse. I'm here in Churchill Graveyard, the final resting place of young Elizabeth Moore. It's as peaceful as it is beautiful, looking out over Barrow Harbour, beyond to Tralee Bay and the Atlantic. Just offshore is Little Samphire Island Lighthouse, where young Elizabeth, Lizzie, spent her final days. It's invaluable to have historic documents like this logbook as first-hand accounts of the history of Little Samphire Island Lighthouse.
Tralee-based swimming club has been involved with swimming around the lighthouse and is associated with it for quite a long time. The club was introduced in 1952, and through various guises down through the years, there's always been a lighthouse swim. I think I did my first swim around the lighthouse personally around 30 years ago, and I've swum probably 400 times plus around it since then. Last year we incorporated a 32k swim, lighthouse to lighthouse we called it, and we started here in Fenit Lighthouse at 5 o'clock in the morning, and beautiful, we had a beautiful moonlit morning, and it was just magnificent, and we headed off from there on a relay team with the local swimming team, Fenit Funky Femmes. They're a relay team with 4 ladies from Fenit, and swam all the way up to Loophead Lighthouse. So that was a 12-13 hour swim, and it was fantastic. The beauty of the lighthouse is not only for swimming around, it's a lifesaver as well, and it's a guide to all kinds of seamen and swimmers. And our swim from Fenit Lighthouse to Loophead Lighthouse, when we finished it, it was dark, so we had to come back in the dark. And when we got down towards Kerry Head and we saw the lights of Fenit Lighthouse, what a beautiful sight it was to see. It just guided us home the whole way.
We're here in the living quarters inside Little Samphire Lighthouse, and the story goes that this room on my left here was haunted. Now, the lighthouse keeper had a collie dog, and the dog would sit outside and bark but refused to go into the room. He gave it a wide berth every time. He would sit outside and bark at the door, perhaps sensing a presence within. So the lighthouse keeper would open the door, and there was never anything inside, but the dog would be outside just barking and barking. So was there a presence within? Does Little Samphire Island Lighthouse really have a ghost? We'll never know. So we're just leaving the living quarters now, and we're going to make our way into the tower of the lighthouse. The Samphire Lighthouse Tower is natural bluish limestone and was designed to stand 13.5 metres high. It is approximately 17 metres above the mean high tide. Now, as you come into the tower, you really get a sense of the history. Access to the lantern room is via a steep metal spiral staircase inside the circular walls of the light tower. Many who visit the lighthouse say that on climbing the staircase, their thoughts were drawn to dramatic stormy nights and what it must have been like to climb those stairs, listening to howling gales, hearing crashing waves, and knowing that keeping the lantern burning could save lives and help vessels ride out the storm while avoiding the perils of the coast. At the top of the light tower is the lantern room. The lantern room, housing the lamp, lens and mirrors for magnification, is surrounded by glass windows. The windows are red, white and green, with each colour of navigation significance. So here we are in the lantern room, and up here are the famous lights from the Little Samphire Island Lighthouse. So we're here in the lantern room, and I'm with John McGibney, who is the tour guide for Little Samphire Island. John, can you tell us about the lights?
Well, the lights here first came on in 1854. It was a lantern, an oil burning light that would have been placed down in here. So for 100 years, the light keeper would have to come out here, climb that very same stairs and light it every evening. It was like that till 1911. So it was a fixed light right up to 1911. 1911 they decided that they wanted a change in the light, they wanted a sequence to the light. So what they did was they fixed an apparatus that would spin around the light itself and creating the on and off effect. Now remember, it's still an oil lamp that's there. You can't expect the man to come out, light a match, blow it out, light a match, blow it out. So what they did was they actually put an apparatus around it that created the on and off effect. The apparatus was then driven by a clockwork machine. He would have to wind that up every couple of hours. So during the winter time, you'd have to come out every couple of hours, wind it up, and off she'd go again. During the winter hours, as I was saying, he'd be out from 4 o'clock in the evening probably, till 9 o'clock the next morning. During the summer months, probably not as much. You know, we had daylight right up to probably 10:30 at night, so it'd be from 10:30 till about 4 in the morning. You know, it was like that right up until 1956. 1956, they decided to put gas out here. So they had acetylene bottles fixed at the bottom of the lighthouse itself, and it was gas up into here, which within 2 years they automated it. So in 1956, the keeper was no longer needed here. It was gas right up until 1976, and then the lights in the background from over that side there kind of drowned out the gas light that was here, the mantle that was burning here. It was drowned out by the electric lights in the background, so they decided to go electric. Rather than take a line from the mainland, they put out 2 generators. So we've got 2 air-cooled Leicester generators down in the generating room below, and they would, during the day, charge up battery banks, which at night then would drive the light.
So John, you're holding a bulb from the generators, and there was a big difference between the size of the bulbs that are used now than too long ago. Can you tell us a bit about that?
This was actually one of the last bulbs that was ever used out here. This was during the generating time, so this was the size of the bulb when the generators were powering the lighthouse. Since then, when we've gone to solar power, the bulbs actually they're only that size. They're gone right way down. Inside here, we have 6 of those bulbs. These new halogen 50-watt bulbs. And there's one only going at any given time, and there's 5 backups. So if one fuses, it automatically clicks into the next one.
This lantern room is fascinating, and if you just look in and compare the size of the bulbs to what they used to use and to what they use now, technology has really come a long way.
Such a beautiful beach here in the Tombolo that connects Fenit Island to the mainland. Such a beautiful place, and of course the lighthouse here it's a real iconic spot, isn't it, for Fenit? It's little Samphire. What a beautiful place, what a fantastic history. I swim here in the mornings when I'm around. It's absolutely a great privilege to be able to do that. And of course, over the last few years now, what we've had is the 3 bottlenose dolphins that have arrived here. And oh my God, to be able to swim here in the morning and see dolphins in the water. They don't tend to come into the shallows, it's very, very shallow along here, but some of the distance swimmers, the channel swimmers here now would tell you that they see them a lot. And even people like Caroline Corkery and Elaine Burrows-Deland, Kevin Williams, when they're doing long swims, because they do kind of 10, 12, 15 kilometre swims across the bay, you know, to Maharees, and they'll tell you they've had the dolphins with them for like literally 2 hours. They say the dolphins, see, dolphins' eyes are more they're really meant to be kind of looking out and looking down. I mean, they can look up a bit, but you know, sometimes they don't look at you like that. But then Caroline, you see them where they literally come up under you like that, and they're looking up at you just to get a good look at that. But I suppose swimming is a very peaceful kind of holistic thing for them. So the dolphins don't mind that, you know. It's not like a boat, and incredible experience to have dolphins here on your doorstep. But yeah, what a beautiful spot.
It's the start of the season here in Fenit, and just have the boat out here now just to give her a few runs and a few tests before we start up. I'm just not lying off here off little Samphire Island here now, and on top of it of course is the famous little Samphire Lighthouse, and 'tis a sight to behold on any given day. But it's early in the morning now, and we're having a nice quiet time out here. Yeah, sure. When I started out with Fenit Sea Safari here first, I suppose people always saw the lighthouse, but they never got up real close to it, so they were always fascinated by it. So I'll always stop here and I'll explain about the lighthouse itself and give a brief history of the lighthouse. You can see the fascination, like human beings there, I suppose, especially mariners and people who understand the sea. They'll always look for a lighthouse when they're coming in from sea. It gives them a bit of, I suppose, reassurance. Coming out of the harbour there and coming along, it's probably the first sight you'll see here, and I always pull up with it and tell people about what's going on here and how long it's been here and stuff like that, and give them the history of the place before I push off out the bay then after that. But I have memories of the place, I suppose. When I was first went to sea, I went out in a boat here from Fenit on the leads, and on board that boat was Thomas Kelly. He was Thomas Tucker Kelly. He was the skipper, and then my first cousin Pay Egan, and Tony Stack, a friend of mine, and myself, the greenhorn, Gary Egan. And it was only then when I actually went to sea with the lads that they told me about the significance of this lighthouse here. They just showed me what it meant to navigate at night and stuff by lighthouses and stuff like that, you know. And I suppose the irony of the whole thing is, out of the four of us that went to sea that time, the sea herself, she saw fit to take two of them, Thomas and Pa, and nearly had myself and Tony as well at one stage, which makes me very sad sometimes. Sometimes when I look at the lighthouse coming in, I'd always think of the boys, you know. So passing out the lighthouse there on the way home there, steaming home there, it just, I often look back at it and I'm glad that I'm living in Fenit and have these beautiful sights around me all the way home there. Just absolutely gorgeous there in the evening time. There's nothing like it in the world really.